The night was unusually still, the kind of silence that presses against the walls of an empty house. Clara sat curled on the sofa, a book half open in her lap, though she hadn't read a word in the last hour. Her life had settled into a quiet routine after years of aching loss, and yet a faint unease lingered tonight, like a shadow she couldn't shake. Then came the knock. It was soft at first, almost hesitant. Clara's head snapped up. Midnight visitors were not part of her quiet existence. She froze, pulse quickening. The second knock was louder, more deliberate. She rose slowly, every step echoing through the silence of her small home. At the door she hesitated, fingers trembling on the lock. Who would be here at this hour? Her mind raced with possibilities. An emergency, a neighbor, maybe even some stranger seeking help. When she finally opened the door, the breath left her body. Daniel stood there. Her husband, dead for 5 years, stood bruised, gaunt, and frighteningly alive in the pale wash of the porch light. His face was thinner, eyes darker, hair longer and unkempt. A scar cut across his temple, and dirt clung to his clothes. For a moment, Clara's brain refused to process what her eyes saw. "Clara!" His voice was raw, cracked, as if unused for years. Her throat closed. The book slipped from her hand and hit the floor. "No," she whispered, stepping back. This isn't real." Daniel reached out, but she recoiled. His hand hung in the air, trembling. "It's me," he said hoarsely. "I'm home." The words stabbed through her like glass. Home? The very idea twisted in her chest. She had buried him in her heart, mourned him in front of neighbors and friends, lit candles on anniversaries. She had accepted the loss as final, and now, this? "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice breaking, equal parts fear and fury. Daniel's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Shame? Guilt? A secret too heavy to name? He glanced over his shoulder into the darkness before stepping across the threshold uninvited. The scent of earth and sweat clung to him. "I'll explain," he murmured, eyes darting nervously around the familiar living room, as though cataloging all that had changed. "But not tonight. I needed to see you." Clara's heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but her words stuck. Instead, she studied him in disbelief, noticing how his posture sagged with exhaustion, how his lips quivered as though holding back truths too dangerous to speak. "You died," she whispered, tears threatening to spill. Daniel, I buried you. Her voice collapsed under the weight of her grief. His gaze softened for a fleeting second. "I know what they told you, but it wasn't the truth." The silence that followed was suffocating. Clara's mind flashed back to the funeral, the police reports, the endless nights of mourning. Everything she thought she knew suddenly cracked open. Daniel swayed slightly, gripping the back of a chair as though his body might give out. "Please, Clara, just let me stay tonight. Tomorrow, I'll explain everything." Her chest tightened. Against every instinct, she nodded stiffly, still unable to believe. She watched him sink into the shadows of their living room, the man she loved and lost occupying the space like a ghost given flesh. Clara lingered in the doorway, staring out into the night. The air was heavy, the world too still, as if holding its breath. Deep inside, fear gnawed at her, whispering that his return was not a miracle, but the beginning of something darker. And as she shut the door, she knew her past wasn't buried after all. It had just knocked to be let back in. Clara barely slept that night. Even with Daniel breathing in the next room, shadows of the past clawed their way back. Every time she closed her eyes, The image of his broken face in the porch light was replaced by the night she was told he was gone. The memory returned with merciless clarity. It had been raining hard, the kind of storm that rattled windows and carved rivers along the roadside. Clara was in the kitchen, setting aside untouched food, when headlights pulled into her driveway. She knew instantly something was wrong. Police cars never brought good news at midnight. 2 officers stood at her door, rain dripping from their hats. Their uniforms smelled of wet wool and mud. One spoke gently, as though rehearsed. "Mrs. Hayes, there's been an accident. Your husband's car went off the cliff on Route 19. We recovered the vehicle. We're sorry." Her knees buckled. She remembered clutching the door frame as if it might hold her together. The storm roared louder, drowning her sobs. "Where is he?" she demanded through her tears. "Take me to him. Where is Daniel?" The taller officer shifted uncomfortably. "The current. It's strong. We haven't recovered his body yet, but the evidence is conclusive." Those words would haunt her. Conclusive, without proof. Days stretched into weeks. Divers scoured the river, nets dragged the shallows, but nothing surfaced. The car was mangled, embedded in rocks like a crushed can, but Daniel had vanished as though swallowed whole. Some whispered the river had taken him, carrying his body miles away. Others murmured stranger theories, that he had run, that he had chosen to disappear. Clara refused to listen. In her heart, she clung to hope, even as officials pressed her to sign the death declaration. Papers stacked up, clinical and cold, reducing her marriage to a line on a report. Presumed dead. The funeral came next. She stood before a coffin that held nothing but Daniel's watch and a folded jacket. The pastor spoke of closure, of faith, of moving forward. But Clara felt none of it. How could there be closure without proof, without a body? The townspeople filled the church, their whispers slicing through the hymns. "Poor woman. He was so young. At least she can move on now. Did you hear? They never found him." Clara heard every word. Each pitying glance carved into her like a blade. She wanted to scream, to tell them they were wrong, that Daniel was still out there. But her lips stayed sealed, trembling under the weight of her grief. Her mother clutched her arm as the casket was lowered into the ground. "It's time to let him go, Clara," she whispered. But Clara couldn't. Even as dirt hit the coffin lid with dull, final thuds, her mind screamed that this was a lie. She saw his smile in every shadow, heard his voice in every dream. Grief, she learned, was not just absence. It was presence twisted cruelly into silence. For months afterward, she wandered the house listening for footsteps that never came. His clothes still hung in the closet, smelling faintly of cologne. His shoes sat by the door, waiting. The world urged her to move on, but Clara lived in limbo, half widow, half believer. And yet, time dulled even the sharpest edges. Seasons changed, bills piled up, and life, against her will, dragged her forward. She began to function again, though never fully. Outwardly she smiled, inwardly she bled. Now, 5 years later, with Daniel alive in the next room, the memory of that coffin burned with bitter irony. She had mourned a ghost while the man still breathed. She had lived under the weight of whispers, rebuilt her life on ashes, only to have it all undone in a single midnight knock. Clara pressed her palms to her temples, staring at the silent ceiling. The town had told her to move on, and he had tried. She had even allowed her heart, fragile and fractured, to begin opening again. But Daniel's return had shattered that fragile new world, and with a sinking dread, Clara realized that the life she had painstakingly rebuilt was about to unravel piece by piece. In the years after Daniel's supposed death, Clara learned that survival wasn't a single act. It was thousands of small choices made every day. She woke up, she worked, she paid bills, and she smiled when people expected her to. The grief never left, but it softened into something duller, like a bruise hidden beneath the skin. At first, her life felt like a hollow echo. She drifted through the house as though it belonged to someone else. But time, insistent and merciless, kept pushing her forward. Out of necessity, she found work at a local law office, first as a receptionist, later as an assistant. She discovered she had a sharp mind for detail and a resilience she hadn't known she possessed. With work came a routine, and with routine came strength. Still, the house was too quiet. Nights stretched endlessly, each one a reminder of the empty space beside her. That's when she began to notice Michael. He lived next door, a carpenter with kind eyes and hands calloused from years of building things that lasted. He wasn't intrusive, just the sort of man who offered to shovel her walkway in the winter or carry groceries when her arms were full. At first, Clara barely spoke more than polite thanks. She was still married in her mind, bound to a ghost. But months bled into years, and slowly, his presence became a comfort. Their first real conversation happened on a rain-soaked evening when the power went out. Clara had fumbled with candles, and Michael, lantern in hand, knocked on her door. "You shouldn't be sitting alone in the dark," he said gently, his smile hesitant. Something in his voice cracked through her defenses. She invited him in. They talked until the storm passed, and for the first time in years, Clara felt laughter slip past her lips. From there, the house was quiet except for the faint creak of floorboards. Clara found herself pacing the kitchen, her mind tugged between the warmth of the life she had built with Michael and the cold, unsettling presence of Daniel in the next room. She could no longer bear the silence. She stepped into the living room. Daniel was sitting on the edge of the sofa, hunched forward, his elbows on his knees. His face was half hidden in shadow, the porch light seeping weakly through the curtains. "Talk," Clara demanded, her voice sharp but trembling. "I buried you, Daniel. I mourned you for years. Now you're here. Alive. I need the truth." He lifted his eyes, and for a moment she almost recognized the man she once loved. But there was something different, colder, detached, as if time had stripped away his softness. "I didn't die that night," he said hoarsely. "The crash, it wasn't the end. Someone found me before the river could finish the job. I was taken." Clara frowned. "Taken? By who?" Daniel rubbed his hands together, restless. "People I owed. Dangerous people. They pulled me out, but not out of kindness. They kept me. Used me. 5 years, Clara. 5 years I couldn't get back." Her stomach twisted. The words were heavy, yet hollow, leaving more questions than answers. "What do you mean, used you? What people? Why didn't you come home? Why didn't you let me know you were alive?" His gaze flicked to the floor. "I couldn't. They wouldn't let me. It was safer if you thought I was gone." Clara's anger rose, fueled by grief that had never truly healed. "Safer for who? You left me drowning in grief while you, what, worked for criminals? Hid away like a coward?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "You don't understand. You couldn't." "Then make me understand," she snapped. "Because right now none of this makes sense. If they kept you, if you were a prisoner, how did you escape? Why now?" The pause that followed chilled her. Daniel leaned back, exhaling heavily, as though calculating what to reveal. Finally, he muttered, "Things fell apart. I saw my chance. I took it. That's all you need to know." But it wasn't enough. His words were riddled with gaps, evasions that felt deliberate. His tone carried no relief at being reunited, only weariness laced with something darker. Clara studied him, her chest tight. His hands trembled faintly, not from weakness but from something else, paranoia, maybe guilt. His eyes darted to the window as though expecting shadows to peel themselves from the night. "You don't seem like a man who just came back to reclaim his life," she said quietly. "You seem like a man still hiding something." Daniel's lips curled in a bitter half-smile. "Maybe I am." The confession, or deflection, made her shiver. Silence settled again, heavy and suffocating. Clara folded her arms, trying to steady her breath. "You can't just walk back into my life with half-truths. I deserve the whole story, Daniel. Until I get it, you're a stranger in this house." For a flicker of a moment, pain flashed in his eyes, but it was gone just as quickly, replaced by that guarded emptiness. "Stranger or not," he said, his voice low, "I'm still your husband." The word cut deep, twisting her insides. Husband. The title felt wrong now, tainted by lies and absence. Clara turned away, her eyes falling on the framed photo of her and Michael on the side table. Guilt surged hot in her chest. Daniel's presence wasn't just reopening old wounds, it was threatening everything she had fought to rebuild. Behind her, Daniel's voice broke the silence once more, quieter this time, but laced with warning. "There are things coming you don't understand, and if you're not careful, Clara, they'll destroy you too." Her heart skipped. She spun back, but Daniel was already standing retray, nodding into the shadows of the hallway, leaving her with words that felt less like an explanation and more like a threat. Clara stood alone in the dim light, her hands trembling. His story was riddled with holes, but one truth was clear. His return was not salvation. It was danger. And she knew the first crack in her fragile new life would appear when Michael discovered the man she once buried was alive. Clara woke to the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. For a fleeting second, she imagined Michael standing at the counter, humming quietly as he always did. But when she opened her eyes, reality cut through the haze. Daniel was here. Daniel, alive, broken, and unsettling. The floorboards groaned as she entered the kitchen. Daniel stood at the sink, sipping from a mug that once belonged to her and Michael. He turned with a half-smile that should have been familiar, but instead chilled her. "Morning," he said, voice calm, as though 5 years of absence could be erased with 2 syllables. Clara's lips parted, but before she could respond, a knock rattled the door. Michael's voice followed. "Clara, you up?" Her stomach clenched. She hurried to the door, stepping outside before he could enter. Michael's brow furrowed, eyes scanning her pale face. "You okay? You didn't answer my call last night." Yes, I just wasn't feeling well," Clara said quickly, her voice unsteady. "We'll talk later." But Michael's gaze hardened with concern. He pushed past her gently, his protective instinct too strong to ignore. And then he froze. Daniel was leaning against the counter, mug in hand, watching them with unsettling composure. The silence that followed was suffocating. Michael's jaw tensed. "Who the hell is this?" Daniel set the mug down, his smile widening just enough to unsettle. "I'm her husband." The words sliced through the room. Clara's heart pounded as Michael turned sharply toward her, disbelief etched across his face. "Clara?" His voice cracked with a mixture of confusion and betrayal. She swallowed hard, tears stinging her eyes. "Michael, I thought he was dead. I buried him, but last night..." She trailed off, unable to finish. Daniel stepped forward, his presence commanding, his voice smooth but edged with danger. "It's true. They told her I was gone. But as you can see, I'm not." Michael's fists clenched at his sides. What game are you playing? You vanish for years, let her suffer, then walk back like nothing happened? Daniel's eyes glinted, his calmness almost mocking. I didn't vanish by choice. Life doesn't always give us the options we want. The two men stood facing each other, tension vibrating in the air. Clara felt as though the walls were closing in, suffocating her with memories she had tried to bury. Michael, she pleaded, her voice breaking. Please, just don't. But Daniel tilted his head, studying Michael with a predator's curiosity. You've been keeping her company, haven't you? Filling the empty space I left behind? Michael's face darkened. Don't twist this. You abandoned her. She rebuilt because she had to. Daniel's smirk faltered into something colder. Careful, neighbor. You don't know the whole story. The way he said it made Clara shiver. It was the same tone Daniel had used years ago during their worst arguments, charming on the surface, poisonous underneath. For a moment, Clara's vision blurred. She saw not the Daniel she once loved, but the man who had frightened her with his anger, his control, his secrets. That man had returned with sharper edges. I think you should leave, Michael said firmly, stepping closer. But Daniel didn't flinch. He leaned in slightly, his words a whisper meant to unsettle. You think you can protect her from me? From what's coming? Michael's chest rose with restrained fury. Clara, trembling, wedged herself between them. Stop it! Both of you! The silence that followed was jagged, filled with unspoken threats. Daniel finally backed awed. But the smile he gave Clara was enough to make her doubt her own instincts. As Michael stormed out, Clara felt her world fracture again. Daniel's charm, his menace, the familiarity of his presence, it twisted her mind into knots. Was he truly dangerous, or was grief and fear distorting her judgment? But as Daniel's eyes lingered on her, dark and unreadable, she realized the truth. The man she once buried had come back not to love her, but to unearth everything she tried to leave behind. The house still vibrated with the echoes of the argument. Michael had left in anger, Daniel lingered in silence, and Clara was left standing in the ruins of her peace. She pressed her back against the wall, hands trembling, mind whirling. Sleep was impossible. The air inside the house felt heavy, thick with old ghosts. She wandered aimlessly through the darkened rooms until her eyes landed on the narrow door to the attic. For years she had avoided it, stuffing it with boxes of Daniel's old belongings, things she couldn't bear to face. Now, with Daniel alive yet still a stranger, she felt pulled there, as if the answers she needed were hidden above. The ladder creaked under her weight. Dust swirled in the beam of her flashlight, and the smell of old wood and forgotten memories wrapped around her. She knelt beside the stack of boxes, her fingers shaking as she pulled one open. Inside lay remnants of the life they once shared, clothes, faded photographs, old receipts. Then, buried under a stack of papers, she found it. A leather-bound notebook, the corners frayed, her husband's handwriting etched across the cover. Her heart thudded. Daniel's diary. Clara opened it slowly. The first entries were mundane, appointments, business notes, small details of daily life. But as she flipped further, the words darkened. Meeting with Harris didn't go as planned. Promises made, promises broken, money missing, they won't wait forever. Eva called again. She says I'm in deeper than I realize, but I can't walk away now. Too much at stake. Clara, his breath caught. Eva. The name appeared again and again, threaded with urgency and secrecy. The entries grew increasingly paranoid, frantic. They're watching. I can feel it. Every call, every drive, someone is there. Clara doesn't know. Can't know. It would destroy her. She turned another page, and her chest tightened. If anything happens, it won't be an accident. The sentence stood alone, bold, underlined twice. Clara's hands shook as she traced the ink. The memory of the crash, the storm, the police's words, conclusive without proof, rushed back with a new, terrible clarity. He hadn't just been unlucky that night. Something darker had been circling him. And yet, another thought pressed against her chest. Maybe it wasn't them. Maybe Daniel had staged it, used his debts, his enemies, his secrets as the perfect cover to vanish. Her stomach churned. Downstairs, she heard a faint creak. Daniel moving, restless in the shadows again. She snapped the diary shut, clutching it to her chest. When she finally descended the ladder, she found Daniel in the hallway watching her. His eyes glinted in the dim light. "What are you doing up there?" His voice was low, careful, but laced with suspicion. Clara forced a tight smile. "Just cleaning. Couldn't sleep." Daniel studied her for a long moment before stepping closer. His presence loomed, unsettlingly familiar, yet edged with menace. "There are things in this house better left untouched." The warning struck her like ice. She tucked the diary behind her back, heart racing. "I know," she whispered, though her mind screamed otherwise. Daniel brushed past her, disappearing into the living room. Clara exhaled shakily, clutching the diary as though it were the only weapon she had. Back in her bedroom, she flipped to the final entry. The handwriting was jagged, rushed. "They'll come for me soon. If Clara finds this, don't trust what he told her. The truth is buried deeper." Her throat tightened. Buried deeper? The words tangled in her mind like a riddle. She closed the diary, her pulse hammering. The questions that haunted her grew heavier, sharper, pointing to dangers she didn't understand. And yet, deep inside, she knew the past wasn't finished, clawing its way back. Because if Daniel's diary was true, someone else out there already knew the truth. And soon, they would come knocking. The diary lay hidden in Clara's nightstand, its words still echoing in her head. She barely slept, every creak of the house jolting her awake. By morning, her nerves were frayed, but she forced herself to keep moving, to act normal around Daniel. He was already up, sipping coffee at the kitchen table, his expression unreadable. When his eyes flicked to hers, Clara quickly looked away. She couldn't let him suspect she had found the diary. At least, not yet. That afternoon, she escaped to town, desperate for air that didn't carry Daniel's shadow. The streets felt different now. Too many faces, too many whispers she couldn't quite hear. She grabbed groceries, though her hands shook so badly she dropped an apple and had to watch it roll across the floor before a stranger bent down to hand it back. Only it wasn't just a stranger. "Clara?" The woman's voice was soft but knowing. She was tall, with sharp cheekbones, dark hair streaked with silver, and eyes that carried a weight of secrets. Clara froze, recognition striking her. Eva. The name from the diary. Clara's breath caught. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" The woman's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Not yet. But you've read his words, haven't you? The ones he never meant you to see." Every hair on Clara's arms stood on end. "Who are you?" "My name is Eva," the woman said calmly, "and I know where your husband has been these last 5 years." The world tilted. Clara gripped her grocery bag tighter, heart pounding. "You're lying. He was in an accident. Eva stepped closer, lowering her voice. "That's what he wanted you to believe. But Daniel didn't die. He ran. He hid. And now he's dragged you back into something you don't understand." The air in the market seemed to thicken. Clara whispered, "Why should I believe you?" Eva studied her, eyes sharp and sad all at once. "Because I was there when it all began. Daniel owed people. Dangerous people. Money, favors, secrets. When the crash happened, it was no accident. It was a plan. A clean exit. Only... She hesitated. He never left clean. He left unfinished business. Clara's stomach twisted. The diary's words screamed back at her. If anything happens, it won't be an accident. Eva leaned closer, her breath warm against Clara's ear. He's not the man you think he is. If you value your life, don't let him pull you under again. Clara stumbled back, shaking her head. No, you're wrong. He came back. He's here now. For the first time, Ava's composure cracked. Her eyes widened, alarm flashing across her face. Here? In town? Clara nodded, chest tightening. Eva grabbed her arm hard enough to make her gasp. Listen to me. If he's back, it means someone sent him. He wouldn't dare show his face unless he was being watched. Which means you are being watched too. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. They will use you. And when you're no longer useful, they will take you away. Just like him. Before Clara could respond, Eva released her grip and turned, disappearing into the crowd as swiftly as she had appeared. Clara stood frozen, her groceries forgotten, her pulse racing. Strangers brushed past her, but all she could hear was Eva's warning, tangled with the echo of Daniel's diary. Back home, the house loomed larger, darker than before. Daniel's car was still in the driveway. Inside, she could see his shadow moving behind the curtains. And for the first time, Clara wasn't just afraid of the man who returned. She was afraid of what followed him back. The walls of Clara's home seemed to breathe with secrets. She sat at the edge of her bed that night, staring at the diary, Ava's words replaying in her mind. He's not the man you think he is. Daniel had been unusually attentive since her return from town, as though he sensed the shift inside her. He cooked dinner, asked careful questions, smiled in ways that felt more like rehearsed masks than genuine warmth. Every gesture made her skin crawl. Later, when he finally retreated to the study, Clara slipped outside into the cold air, phone clenched in her hand. She didn't know if it was courage or desperation, but she dialed the number scribbled on a receipt Eva had pressed into her hand before vanishing. The line rang once, twice. Then a low voice answered. Clara. Her stomach lurched. Ava, we need to talk. Minutes later, they met at the edge of an abandoned lot outside town. The moonlight threw shadows across Eva's sharp features, making her look both older and fiercer than in the grocery store. You shouldn't have called me, Eva said, her tone clipped. If Daniel knows, he'll... I don't care what he thinks, Clara interrupted, anger sharpening her fear. I want the truth. All of it. Ava studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. Fine. But once you hear it, there's no going back. Clara's hands trembled. Tell me. Ava exhaled, her breath visible in the night air. 5 years ago, Daniel wasn't just in debt. He was in deep with a criminal syndicate. Smuggling, fraud, laundering dirty money. He thought he was clever enough to play both sides, but men like that don't forgive betrayal. They were going to kill him. Clara's throat tightened. So he faked the crash. Eva nodded. I helped him. I was his lover then, and his partner in all of it. Together we built the lie that sent him underground. The admission cut through Clara like glass. You love him? Eva's eyes darkened. Loved? No. I used him, the same way he used me. Daniel was brilliant at making people believe they were the center of his world. But everything he did, every kiss, every promise, was for himself, for power, for money. Clara felt the ground shift beneath her. Then why come back now? Ava's expression hardened. Because he lost what he left behind. Millions, hidden somewhere before the crash. The syndicate never found it, but they've been waiting, watching. Now he's back to reclaim it. And he'll use you to do it. Your name, your trust, your innocence. You're his shield, Clara. And when he's done, he'll leave you in pieces. Clara staggered back, clutching her coat tighter around her. You're saying he doesn't love me? That he never did? Eva stepped closer, her voice low but sharp. Love isn't in Daniel's vocabulary. Survival is. Betrayal is. And if you stand too close, you'll be collateral damage. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the wind hissing through the lot. Clara's heart pounded against her ribs, her mind racing through memories, the laughter, the promises, the life she thought they had built. Were all of them lies? Why are you telling me this? Clara whispered. For the first time, Ava's voice softened. Because I was you once. Blind. Believing. And it nearly destroyed me. You still have a chance to get out. Headlights flared in the distance. A black car slowed as it passed, its windows tinted, its presence lingering too long. Ava's eyes narrowed. They're watching, she muttered. We don't have much time. She turned back to Clara, gripping her arm with urgency. You have to decide. Stay and play his game, or walk away before the blood spills again. Clara wanted to protest, to demand proof, but the car's brake lights glowed red, then vanished down the road, leaving only the echo of dread. When she returned, home, Daniel was waiting at the door, his smile too perfect, too knowing. Out late, aren't you? He said softly, his eyes glinting in the porch light. Clara's pulse hammered. For the first time she saw it, the predator hiding behind the familiar face. And she realized Eva was right. Daniel hadn't come back for love. He had come back for the blood ties that chained them both, and for betrayal sharp enough to cut through everything she thought she knew. The porch light flickered as Daniel leaned against the doorframe, his smile thin, almost mocking. Clara froze, Eva's words still ringing in her ears. She could taste the lie in Daniel's voice before he even spoke. Out late, he murmured. Shopping doesn't usually take hours. Clara forced herself inside, brushing past him. Don't start. But he followed, his footsteps slow, deliberate, predatory. I should ask where you went, but I think I already know. Her chest tightened. Then say it. Stop circling me like I'm prey. Daniel chuckled, low and humorless. Prey? No, Clara. You've always been my anchor, the only thing that makes this whole rotten mess bearable. She spun on him, fury breaking through her fear. Stop lying. I know about Eva. I know about the syndicate. And I know the accident wasn't an accident at all. The words landed like a slap. For a moment, Daniel's mask slipped. His jaw tightened, his eyes flaring with something dark. Then he exhaled, almost relieved. So, he said softly, you finally know. Silence pulsed between them, heavy and suffocating. Clara's pulse roared in her ears. Tell me the truth, she demanded. All of it. Daniel moved toward her, his face shadowed by the dim light of the kitchen. The truth is, I was drowning. Debts, enemies, everyone clawing at me. The night of the storm, I staged it. The crash, the wreckage, they all bought it. Eva helped me vanish. We thought we were untouchable. Clara's hands clenched at her sides. And what about me? Did you ever think about the wife you left behind? The woman who buried an empty casket? Daniel's eyes flicked with something like regret, but it passed too quickly. I couldn't take you with me. You'd never survive that world. Her voice cracked. So instead, you let me suffer. Let me think you were dead. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You don't understand. Eva betrayed me. She took the money, turned me into the very men we were hiding from. They tore everything from me. For 5 years I rotted in their shadows. And now, his eyes glinted with rage. Now, I want it back. Clara's breath caught. So that's why you came back. Not for me. For revenge. Daniel's silence was answer enough. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. And me? What am I in this plan of yours? He reached out, brushing her cheek with chilling gentleness. Your leverage, Clara. Pure, innocent, untouched by this filth. They won't dare kill me if they think it risks harming you. You're my shield. The words crushed the air from her lungs. Clara stepped back, her heart hammering. I'm not your shield. I'm not your pawn. Daniel's smile returned, sharp and cruel. You always were. You just didn't know it. Tears burned her eyes, but fury steadied her. I rebuilt my life without you. I found love again, Daniel. I found peace, and I will not let you destroy it. For the first time, his expression cracked, jealousy darkening his face. Michael, he hissed. I saw the way you looked at him. Don't fool yourself, Clara. He'll never protect you from what's coming. No one can. The room felt smaller, suffocating. Shadows seemed to press in, thick with unspoken threats. Clara's hands trembled, but she lifted her chin, refusing to let him see her break. You may have faked your death once, she whispered, but I won't let you bury me alive. Daniel's eyes narrowed, something dangerous flickering there. And in that moment, Clara knew the night was far from over. And because the truth was finally out, ugly, sharp, and bleeding, and the real game was about to begin. The night was thick with tension. Rain pelted the roof in staccato bursts, rattling windows as though echoing the storm inside Clara's heart. She stood between two men, the man she once loved and buried, and the man who had become her anchor, her safety. Both were dangerous now, one by obsession, the other by righteous fury. Daniel's eyes glinted in the dim light of the living room. You still think you can defy me? He hissed, stepping closer. After everything I've done for you? Clara's hands shook, but she squared her shoulders. You're done, Daniel. Your lies, your games, they end tonight. Michael stepped forward, his jaw tight, fists clenched. Back off, Daniel. She's not your shield. She's not your pawn. If you touch her, I swear. Daniel laughed, a cold, bitter sound that cut through the rain. You think brute force will stop me? You've underestimated everything for 5 years, and now you've got her right where I want her. Clara felt the old fear curl inside her, the same fear that had haunted her since his return. But this time it was tempered with resolve. No more running, no more silence. The room was tense enough to snap. Daniel lunged suddenly toward the table, knocking over papers, shoving Clara aside. Michael reacted instantly, pushing Daniel back, and the first blow was thrown. Fists collided with the sound of cracking wood and splintering glass. Clara ducked, heart hammering, her mind racing for any way to intervene. Daniel grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, flashing it dangerously toward Michael. Stay back, he roared, his voice raw with anger. This is my life, my plan. Michael's eyes never left him. You've lost, Daniel. It's over. Let her go. Daniel lunged, but Michael dodged, tackling him to the floor. The knife skidded across the tile. In the scuffle, Daniel's hand caught the edge of the counter, splintering it further. Clara seized the moment, grabbing the diary and hurling it at him. The leather-bound book struck Daniel's head with a sickening thud. He staggered back, dazed. Michael didn't hesitate. He wrestled Daniel to the floor again, pinning him, the rain of rage and pent-up fear fueling every move. Daniel struggled violently, but the fight had drained him. His breathing grew ragged, his movements slower, predictable. Finally, in one swift motion, Daniel's body twisted awkwardly, hitting the sharp corner of the fireplace. A final gasp escaped him, a wet, choking sound. Blood blossomed across the tile as his life left him in a violent, unmistakable end. Clara froze, shaking, staring at the man who had haunted her life for 5 years, now motionless. She wanted to scream, to cry, to vomit, but instead, the storm outside mirrored the storm inside. Rain pounded, wind rattled, and all she could hear was her own heartbeat. Michael sat back on his heels, chest heaving. "It's over," he said quietly, though his hands still trembled. Clara moved toward him, collapsing into his arms. Relief mixed with terror, disbelief mixed with sorrow. "It's really over?" she whispered. For the first time in half a decade, she allowed herself to believe it. Daniel was gone. His manipulations, his lies, his cruelty, terminated in a single, undeniable moment. The diary lay on the floor, stained, open to the last entry. If anything happens, it won't be an accident. Now the truth was brutally, violently confirmed. Not an accident indeed, but justice had arrived. They sat together amidst the wreckage of the room, shattered furniture, splintered wood, bloodied tiles. Outside, the storm began to ease, the first weak light of dawn breaking through the clouds. Clara pressed her hand to Michael's chest, feeling the steady thrum beneath. She didn't speak, didn't need to. The silence between them was filled with the weight, of survival, of relief, and the sharp knowledge that the past had left scars too deep to vanish. Yet in that moment, she understood. She was alive. Free. The life Daniel tried to control, the plans he sought to manipulate, were finally hers to reclaim. The storm had passed. Death had come twice, first faked, then final. And now, at last, Clara could begin to breathe. The storm had passed, but the air in Clara's house still felt heavy, as if it had absorbed the chaos of the night before. The rain had washed the streets clean, but the memory of Daniel's final violent end clung to the walls, to the furniture, to her skin. Clara moved slowly through the living room, her bare feet silent on the wet tiles. Shattered wood and bloodstains marked the floor like a grim reminder of how close she had come to losing everything. Michael was beside her, steady as ever, though his hands shook slightly. They had survived, but survival never felt like freedom, not entirely. She picked up the diary, now smeared with crimson, and ran her fingers over the leather. Daniel's words, the warnings, the secrets, all were etched into her mind. She closed it gently, placing it on the table like a relic of a life that had nearly destroyed her. "I can't believe it's over," Michael murmured, voice hoarse. His eyes scanned the wreckage as though expecting Daniel to rise from the floor, to laugh and taunt them again. Clara shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "Over? Maybe. But will it ever feel like it?" Her mind replayed the years she had spent believing he was dead, the grief that had hollowed her out, the brief glimpse of peace she had found with Michael, all shattered in a single terrifying night. She had survived, yes, but the cost had been immeasurable. In the silence, memories intruded like shadows. The words from Daniel's diary, Eva's warnings, the flashes of violence, the screams, the threats, haunted her still. She could feel them, a constant pulse under her skin, reminding her that survival was not victory. Michael reached for her hand, fingers warm and grounding. "We'll get through this," he said softly. "Together." Clara let herself lean into him, seeking comfort in the steady presence of someone who truly cared. And yet, a part of her remained distant, wary. Trust had been a luxury she could no longer afford, even with Michael. The police had arrived hours after the fight, finding the aftermath chaotic, but explaining the facts as best they could. Daniel's death was ruled self-inflicted during a struggle, though Clara knew better. No one would ever fully understand the web of lies, the betrayal, the criminal debts, or the dark shadows that had trailed him for years. She wondered if the syndicate still watched, waiting for a mistake, for the chance to pull her back into the darkness. The fear was invisible but tangible, pressing down like a storm cloud that refused to dissipate. Clara wandered to the window, gazing at the dawn breaking over the town. Light spilled across the streets, golden and fragile. For the first time, the world seemed quiet, normal. But the quiet was deceptive. Peace, she realized, was temporary. The cost of surviving Daniel and the truths she had uncovered would linger forever. Michael joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. She rested her head against him, feeling the warmth and safety of a presence that wasn't Daniel, that wasn't danger. Yet she couldn't shake the ache in her chest, the knowledge that life had irrevocably changed. "Do you ever think we'll be safe?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Michael held her tighter, thoughtful. "Safe isn't the word I'd use, but we'll live. That's all we can promise each other." Clara closed her eyes, letting the moment stretch. Survival, she realized, was the only victory she had left. Justice had been served, in its rawest, most brutal form, but it didn't heal the scars, didn't erase the betrayal, didn't undo the lie, hours of fear and manipulation. And somewhere deep inside she knew the truth. She would never be completely free. The memory of Daniel, the choices she had been forced to make, and the shadow of what could have been would linger like a quiet echo in her mind, haunting her long after the blood dried. She opened her eyes, staring into the distance. The storm was gone, the sun rising over the horizon. Life moved forward, but it would always carry the weight of the past. Clara's survival had a price, and the ledger of that price would never balance. For now, all she could do was breathe, and remember